Welcome back mga kabayan, nagbabalik po muli ang inyong lingkod upang magbigay sa inyo ng mga bago at nagbabagang mga balita. Muli ngang nagwala si Clarita Carlos sa Senado kung saan pinangaralan niya umano ang mga Senado na tinagurian pa namang mga abogado ang lahat sa kanila patungkol sa kung ano ang batas. Tila ba naging mga ignorante ang mga mambabatas na Senado na ito na sobrang galing at talino na ipinimalas ni Clarita Carlos. Tinawag pa nga ng propesora si Sen Risa Hontiveros na bobo dahil hindi man lang kayang magpaliwanag ng isang batas sa ating institusyon. Kaya pati ang propesora ay nagtataka dahil kung papaano nakapasa itong Hontiveros na ito sa kanyang bar kung hindi naman pala marunong umintindi ng batas. Sa katapangan ni Clarita Carlos, nakikita ko sa kanya ang dating senadora na si Miriam Defensor, matalino at matapang at tunay pang may malasakit sa bansa at sa taong bayan. Para sa buong impormasyon, panuorin ang buong video at kung bago ka pa lamang sa aking channel, huwag kakalimutang mag-subscribe, pindutin ang notification bell at piliin ang all upang laging maging updated sa mga bago at nagbabagang mga balita at sa mga solid viewers natin dyan. Maraming salamat po sa patuloy na pagtangkilik sa ating channel. Ang isyong ito ay naging usap-usapin din sa mundo ng social media. Merong isang netizen na nagsabi, after 50 years na bawat batas ay kailangan na ang revision if in cases that there are provisions need to amend. Kung pagbabasehan natin kung kailan nagkaroon tayo ng saligang butas mula 1902 until now, it is already 122 years past. Actually, ang 1987 Constitution is still based on the 1902 Constitution framework done by the 116th US Congress. From then on, ginawa tayong insular government up to 1935, Commonwealth government where we are made a corporate republic. I am a history writer and researcher. This comment is actually based on the book that is written by Leones Job I, an Orthodox author writing about our country. At sabi din naman ng isang netizen, tama si Professor Carlos, Filipino first, matagal na yan wala rin nangyayari. Yung mga senador na pabor dyan ay may pinoprotektahang negosyante, kaya ang nakikinabang mga oligarko sa bansa katulad na lang ng mga inasal, ang Jollibee, di makapagtaas ng presyo kasi mababangan naman ang mga inasal. Natatalo na sila kaya inopera ng malaking halaga, bininta ayun, biglang taas ang presyo, ang tao mapipilitan na lang kasi no choice na sila. Payagan natin ang dayuhan magkaroon sila ng sariling negosyo, mas masigla ang negosyo kung may kakumpetensya. Ang Pinoy kasi mas gusto yung di sila mapagod, kita agad. Yung chick boy na tinayo nung mga may-ari ng mang inasal, di naman tanggap ng masa, kaya sayang nasilaw sa pera.
Ganun din, baka mas malala pa. Baka ang mangyari, tatanggalin natin ang state grid kay C, pero ibibigay naman kay C. Sa gitna ng malalang alitan sa West Philippine Sea.
Believe in these things. As a social scientist, if they are not empirically grounded, ay laway lang po yan. Yeah, with all due respect, I agree with the reciprocity. But the first one, I don't. Because if you have a strict regulatory framework, then it can be to whom it may concern. So I think we should not ban XYZ, whichever country. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Carlos. Sen Risa, yes.
Salamat, Mr. Chair. Just a quick correction for the record. With all due respect, I certainly did not say that Filipino first is a passé policy. Salamat din, Sen JV. Magandang umaga po muli sa ating lahat. Maiksi lang po dahil pagpapatuloy lang ng hearing, pero siguro magbibigay na ako ng preview ng aking mga concerns. Ayon mismo sa ilang resource persons sa huling pagdinig, Chacha is divisive and is not worth it. And I agree with them. Pero gusto ko din siyasatin yung sinabi ng isang resource person na the patrimony provisions in our Constitution as a business model are passé. Laos na ba talaga ang ating saligang batas na nangangalaga sa pang-Pilipinong likas at gawang yaman? Ngayon pong araw, pag-uusapan natin ang public utilities. Alam niyo po, Nireview ko ang mga discussion noong Public Services Act na katatalakay din ni Sen Grace, and I saw the great care this Senate took when we identified the critical utilities that would still be under the protective mantle of the constitutional provisions on foreign ownership. Sa amyenda natin na ito, pati po ang critical utilities natin fair game na for future Congresses to give away. Yes, even to state-owned foreign companies which pose grave national security risks. Hindi ba't nagalit tayo noon nung lumabas na ang mga manual ng NGCP na may hawak sa ating state grid ay nakasulat sa Mandarin at hindi mabasa ng ating Pilipinong inhinyero? I'm also interested to find out if the problem really is the lack of foreign investments or our chronic failure to address anti-competitive, monopolistic behavior. Imbes na basagin ng charter change ang monopolyo ng mga dominant domestic companies, papalitan lang ba sila ng mga dayuhang kumpanya? Ganun din, baka mas malala pa. Baka ang mangyari, tatanggalin natin ang state grid kay C, pero ibibigay naman kay C sa gitna ng malalang alitan sa West Philippine Sea. Naalala ko ang mga ito at naalala ko ang aking tito, the late nationalist economist Alejandro Lichauco, na sinabing imposible ang pag-unlad ng bansa kung kontrolado ng dayuhan ang ekonomiya na bumubuhay dito. A nation that is poor, dependent, exploited, and oppressed by others, he warned, quote, can only have a population of farmers and workers similarly poor, dependent, exploited, and oppressed, closed quote. Salamat po, Mr. Chair, and I'm ready to engage later.
Yes, thank you, Senator Risa. Senator JV?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Anyway, we're here to listen, of course, for resource persons. But I guess our two colleagues have already set the tone on what we want to find out. The Public Services Act was really scrutinized by the Senate and made sure that under our chair, Senator Grace, that it would be for the benefit of the Filipino people to improve our utilities and other infrastructure and others. Likewise, Mr. Chair, we just recently passed the public partnership, public-private partnership code, which are all intended to improve our services, infrastructure, energy, and utilities here in the Senate. I think we just have to give these measures the chance that to be realized. So is it really is charter change really needed at this point now that these two legislations were already passed, which are intended to improve our utilities and others. Mr. Chair, of course, our energy and infrastructure has really fallen behind. We have fallen behind our ASEAN neighbors. These are requisites for industrialization and development. The high cost and efficient supply of energy really has really hindered our growth, and we're hope. But as mentioned by our Chair Committee on Public Services, PINAS was enacted in 2001, wherein the Napocor power plants, power generation, transmission, distribution were privatized and was intended to foster to encourage competition. Ang nangyari lang po, yung privatization ang natuloy, yung presyo ng kuryente remained high. Kaya nga sabi ng IPIRA, mukhang ibinera. So we really have to be very careful about all of these things. We cannot rush. We cannot put deadlines. No, we cannot be pressured because it's not very easy to amend the Constitution. So we cannot make mistakes, Mr. Chair. So I agree with you that we will have to be very careful about it. And of course, we want to find out if how can the economic provisions or amendments, the economic provisions, improve energy, infrastructure, utilities, much more. Now that we already have passed the Public Services Act, the PPP Code, so do we need really to amend the Constitution at this point. So, Mr. Chair, again, I would like to listen to our resource persons so that we will have a better appreciation of the things that will be taken up today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I was taking down notes earlier as I listened to Senator Poe and Senator Hontiveros, and I'd like to address the issues that they have raised. I think I'd like to take off from the point of view of social scientists who's looking at this from a macro standpoint. So I will not go into the nitty-gritty because all my colleagues here have already addressed many dimensions of the issue. I think the first question of Senator Grace is, do we need to change the Constitution to declare that we're open for business? And the quick and dirty answer there would be no, because you already are making so many legislative actions to open up the economy. But I think the challenge there is it opening up enough, or are we addressing really what we want to happen? Here, I'd like to go into a bit of epistemology, if you don't mind, which is, when you establish something and you say that you know something, that means you have identified the composite of variables which will bring about a particular result, isn't it? Now here, as I listen to the very intelligent comments around the table and those who are joining us virtually, and I noticed that we are not able to categorize our variables into most critical, less critical, and so on. In other words, we don't have an ordinal list where one is first, second, etc. And that one, as I agree with Dr. Fabella, cannot be an article of faith. It has to be empirically grounded. So however much we believe in these things, as a social scientist, if they are not empirically grounded, ay laway lang po yan. Okay, so I think because all the senators have their own research component, I would like them to pay attention to grounding all these claims. It's only if we have the hard evidence, the evidence conditions that will support them, that we can declare that we know something. It's the reason why you will notice we're shooting here, there, and everywhere. It's because we're not able to categorize them into the most important, less important, etc. Okay, of course, remember I've been part of the cabinet for X number of months as National Security Advisor. One of the things I put together there would be to present to our president in one cabinet meeting, I think it was late October or early November, a national strategy. Why do we need a national strategy? And this is where I had, had to cross swords with one of my colleagues, Tineda. Yan. Sabi niya, ba't mo pa kailangan national strategy? Andyan na nga yung NEDA plan. Sabi ko, tinuro ko din siya. Sabi ko, bakit naman sa national plan mo wala man lang isang single line dan about national security? And because I was the vice chair of the NTFL also at the time, bakit wala man lang dyan nakatutok tungkol doon sa mga barangay natin at ano ang gagawin dito sa mga natitira pa na mga influence barangay? Wala talaga doon. I mean, i-google niyo yan at saliksikan niyo yan. Okay, what am I saying? If we're just shooting here, there, and everywhere, and we don't have anything, a big picture that will crochet together, that will stitch together all these things, then we don't know what to do. In terms of konti na nga ang salapi mo, kung saan-saan mo pa nilalagay. Kapag the national strategy ka, pag konti ang salapi mo, alam mo, ito yung number one, yun ang una mong bigyan ng pansin. Ganun din siguro dito, no? Bakit tayo masyadong nagre-rely sa foreign investment? What about domestic investment? Hindi ba natin nakita yung sinabi na nga, yung regulatory framework, sinabi ni Dr. Villegas kanina, kahit ang inyong mga domestic investor, ay sinasakal din ng over-regulation ng ating gobyerno. Parang ang unang assumption mo ikaw ay magnanakaw, saka mo na i-prove otherwise. No? Bakit ganon? In other words, well, we are so much banking in foreign direct investment. We should also bank on our local investors and talagang bigyan niya sila ng alagwa para talagang magawa nila ang kanilang ginagawa. Bigyan ko kayo ng example. No? My former boss here, Senator Tolentino at the MMDA, I was there with him since 2010 as one of his consultants for the traffic management. Dines namin, Senator, I don't know kung nakwento ko na sa iyo doon, kung paano yung bureaucracy natin as been identified by other resource persons, is really one of the major obstacles to why no investment is coming in. Merong isang gripo dyan na nagtutulo, no? Sabi ko, ang bilis na, ang dili naman bumili ng gripo, parang 200 pesos lang. Sabi ko, sundan natin kung paano magbili ng gripo. Alam nyo ba kung gaano yun? 4 na buwan. I-raise namin ito, Senator Tulin. 4 na buwan at 26 signatures para po makabili ng gripo. Gusto ko lang to make the point that the bureaucracy really matters. You have a Byzantine bureaucracy, and I have seen polls of foreign investors telling you that there are 2 major things, critical variables that matter to them, are Byzantine bureaucracy and the level of corruption. Yung ownership that they don't matter. By the way, tama si Dr. Fabella. Ownership by Filipinos is an article of faith. It doesn't matter who owns it. Sabi ko nga sa telco, kahit galing pa siya sa Jupiter, basta magpagawa siya talaga ng internet, okay lang. Does ownership matter? No, not anymore. In the university, we're telling our students, we're training you to be citizens of the world. We are breaking down all the boundaries of the artificial nation state. We already made commitments in ASEAN for regional integration. Why, for heaven's sakes, I was always so preoccupied on, keeping the nation state. It's one of the scourges of humanity, if I may say so. So, last point, yung Filipino first po, tama po si Senator Hontiveros. Pasay na po yan. It should be rendered obsolescent, no? Bakit Filipino first? Because once upon a time in the past, we tried to, to divest ourselves of all the colonial things that chained us, no, to the former colonial rulers of our country. Wag na po tayong Filipino first. No one study I have seen thus far has demonstrated quite creditably that ownership by Filipinos work. I challenge anyone here around the table, the social scientists. Meron bang ganyan? Wala po. Ownership doesn't matter. No? But what we really want is, in fact, I had suggested in one of my papers that if our economic managers cannot, in fact, lower or eradicate the 21% of their privileges na sinabi mo, no, na mga poor, mag-hire tayo po ng international group of economic managers. We pay them depending on the percentage of increment that they are going to contribute to GDP. I know this is an iconoclastic viewpoint, but for God's sake, we have to be iconoclasts now. We are the 5th most mineralized countries in the world. We have millions of professionals. We should be embarrassed that we have 21% who are poor. Tama ba, Dr. Villegas? Tama, di ba? So I think, let me go back to the issue of a national strategy. I address this also to the military. Several times they have asked me to help them design their strategy for the Air Force, for the Philippine Marines, etc. Sabi ko, saan ba kayo nakatukot yung strategy nyo? Meron bang National Defense Plan? O kung ang isip nyo lang yan, saan magagaling yung National Defense Plan, Senator po? Hindi ba magagaling yan sa National Strategy? Dibuho yan eh. It's a big, big picture. And siguro lastly, sorry sa Senator Angara, medyo nagsosobra na ata ako sa time ko. Senator po, you mentioned something about banning certain countries from ownership. And are you referring to China?
In the Public Service Act, any country that the President or the National Security Council views as a threat to us is actually eliminated from or banned from owning certain critical infrastructure, telecommunications, for example, I believe airports, etc. And also countries that don't reciprocate or allow us also the same type of ownership in their country would not be allowed. That's why those are some of the safeguards we put as a compromise to those who are a little bit wary about this Public Service Act being open.
Yeah, with all due respect, I agree with the reciprocity, but the first one I don't. Because if you have a strict regulatory framework, then it can be a to whom it may concern. So I think we should not ban XYZ, whichever country. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Carlos. Senator Risa, yes?
Salamat, Mr. Chair. Just a quick correction for the record. With all due respect, I certainly did not say that Filipino first is a passé policy. In fact,
One
I
of your
believe...
source persons, I stand corrected.
Thank you, ma'am. In fact, I believe that Filipino first is a positive and dynamic principle in formulating and constantly updating our economic policy. And lastly, Mr. Chair, at this point, if 60 to 100% ownership in Filipino hands doesn't matter anyway in the big picture, then let's keep that in Filipino hands and work on the real problems identified both by those opposed to and supportive of RBH 6. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Risa.
Mr. Chair, just a quick comment.
Yes,
I
Senator
would
Risa.
like to thank also Dr. Carlos for bringing up something that we haven't really discussed in our minds being focused on foreign direct investments. It's true, local businesses are also suffering. What we're trying to do is we're actually hunting in the zoo, like the ones that are complying with the laws, paying taxes, are the ones being audited, while the ones that are in the informal economy getting away with so much, we don't focus our attention on. So,
Sa napanood niyong video mga kabayan, ano naman po ang inyong mga opinyon? Ang ating comment section ay bukas para sa inyong mga komento at reaksyon. Huwag kakalimutan, do not let your thoughts left unspoken. As citizen of this country, your opinions matter. Huwag pong mahihiyang magbigay ng inyong mga saloobin, mga kabayan. Siyempre, huwag niyo din pong kakalimutan i-share ang video ito upang inyong mga kaibigan at kapamilya ay maging aware din sa kung anong nangyayari sa ating bansa. Huwag din kakalimutang mag-iwan ng like. Hanggang sa muli!